From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Feeling pretty good today. The 25 Best Social Critics Podcasts, as determined by feedspot.com. We've been on that list. We've showed up at various positions. The worst I've seen us is number 12 in the 25 best. We're at number 4. Yeah, last time I checked, we were at number 6. We're currently at number 4 of the 25 best social critics podcasts, according to feedspot.com. I did not submit this podcast for recognition. I didn't sponsor anything. I don't know how we wound up on this list, but we did. So thanks. Thanks for listening. And like the more conventional content creators always say, hit the like button, make a comment, write a review, share, all that social media stuff that I never badger you to do those things. But now this has gone to my head a little bit. We're number 4 in the nation. All right. Okay. I'll take that. So, no, I won't start badgering you. I won't become one of those guys. But just this once, I'll say it. Yeah, go ahead, write a review, like, share, ring the bell. I don't know, whatever it takes. All right, back to the real kind of horrible stuff here. I've been promising, I've mentioned it several times, that we need to talk about the whole Techno-Fascist wing of our current fight against the fascist takeover. I've been promising for a long time that we talk about the Peter Thiels and the Elon Musks and the Curtis Yarvin, that whole bit. And I've been promising and we never got around to it. Well, I'll try to get to at least a start on that today. I did watch the podcast with Ross Douthat and Peter Thiel that made a lot of news. I was really disgusted by it. So let's see if we have time for that. If not, I'll just make the promise again. We'll get to it, I promise. And of course, we'll make time for events and boycotts. But let's start with this, get this out of the way. The very big, very bad bill, of course, passed in the Senate. Senators Susan Collins, Tom Tillis, and Rand Paul voted against it, so J.D. Vance had to come in and break the tie, the 50-50 tie. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska should have been the 4th vote to take it down, but she didn't have the courage to do it, like John McCain famously did when he was the deciding vote to save the Affordable Care Act. You'll remember that dramatic moment. Well, Lisa Murkowski decided that she'd get bought off instead. And she justifies it up and down, saying that she's working for her constituents, and she did indeed get a bunch of carve-outs. Oh yeah, we're going to ruin the lives of all Americans, but Alaskans will water down the poison for you. We'll take out a couple of provisions. We'll add a couple of provisions. We'll create a couple of carve-outs for the people of Alaska in order to get Lisa Murkowski's vote. And she came right out and admitted how bad the bill is and how it's going to hurt a lot of people. And she thought this justified her vote. Well, it's going to hurt Alaskans less. I'll always stand up for my voters. No, you don't get how the Senate works. You don't get how life works. You don't get basic morality. What is wrong with Lisa Murkowski? People will die. Tens of thousands of people will die. Every expert who's looked at this will tell you. Americans for lack of health coverage, people around the world for lack of life-saving food and medicine that was once provided by this country. Plus, it's the largest transfer of wealth from the poor and middle class to the rich. Well, if there is any middle class left, that's soon to be gone. So, yeah, the repugnants in the Senate just fell in line, openly supporting the plutocrats, openly supporting the fascists, becoming fascists themselves. They now own this lock, stock, and barrel. They own the bill. They own the consequences of it. And they own the the whole program, the philosophy. They are in lockstep with the oligarchs, the plutocrats, the fascists. They're one and the same. It is what defines them. And speaking of the fascist takeover, that's something that you and I have talked quite a lot about, that I'm hearing nowhere else, literally nowhere else. And that is how embedded in this bill are provisions that codify Project 2025 and establish the imperial presidency. Virtually all of the news coverage has been about Medicaid. And of course it's horrible. Of course it is. Of course it deserves our attention. Nursing homes will close. Rural hospitals will close. People will die. This is crazy. But they don't care. They're fine with it. Yeah, I'll be curious to see what the Project 2025 tracker looks like. There's a great website I suggest you take a look at, project2025.observer. It tracks the progress of the administration and Congress in how they're bringing Project 2025 to life. Now, of course, Congress has only passed a handful of bills so far in this term. Most of the action is through illegal executive orders. But whether through legislation or executive orders or agency policies, whatever, this Project 2025 tracker takes a look at the progress. And according to, I just checked it before I spoke with you, 42% overall is where they currently stand. The repugnants have achieved 42% of the goals of Project 2025. That's a damn lot. Most or all of it probably being challenged in the courts, but we know that story. How the courts are either being ignored or sidelined by the Supreme Court. So we don't know how much power the courts even have anymore to stop any of this or even to slow it down. So yeah, 42%. I'll be curious to see what it looks like after they pass the very big, very bad bill. Speaking of which, it's not passed yet. The Senate passed it. It has to go back to the House. So there's no way I'm going to throw in the towel as long as the final vote hasn't been taken. The congressional switchboard is 202-224-3121. We have to keep the pressure on right up until the very last vote. I'm recording this on Wednesday afternoon. It's being debated on the House floor as we speak. They have some procedural votes they have to go through. So we really don't have any idea when the final vote will come. I don't want to pretend to even guess. But as I say, I'm recording this Wednesday afternoon. You're going to hear this Wednesday or Thursday or maybe Friday. And there's no guarantee that it'll be a done deal by then. So call your representative in the House, 202-224-3121. Tell them no. All right, well, speaking of taking action, let's take a look. There's a general strike scheduled, but it's not until May 1st, 2028. Huh? Yeah, I just happened to see this in my socials. Apparently, unions are getting together. They're talking about this, and they're planning, long-term planning. I'll say it's long-term. So, yeah, okay, guess mark your calendars for May Day, May 1st, 2028. All right. General strike. We've been calling for this for quite a while. From our tiny little spot here, we haven't been able to muster up any big movement, but we'll keep yelling for it. Yeah, of course, general strikes, there were several in this nation's history. None since early 20th century, really. The Congress put a stop to it. They made general strikes illegal. They made it illegal for unions to cooperate in a general nationwide strike. Well, there are lots of things that are illegal that aren't right. So, I'll remind you, there's the generalstrikeus.com, generalstrikeus.com. That's where they're trying to get things organized. They're gathering pledges. They want people to pledge to participate. And then once they get enough pledges, then they'll get down to serious organizing. But a general strike requires a minimum number of people who commit to it before they just, ring that bell. Otherwise, it's not only ineffective, it could be downright dangerous and counterproductive. So I understand why they're doing it this way. I don't quite understand the 2028, those people, but whatever. But yeah, the General Strike people at generalstrikeus.com, I get how they're doing it and why they're doing it. There's also some other online and social media organizing. I guess there are a couple of threads on Reddit, on Discord, local organizers getting connected. Certain labor unions have advocated for a general strike, saying they're ready to go. But again, it takes a lot of coordinated effort. All right, let's take a look at some more immediate action. July 4th, People's Independence Day. Here in Milwaukee, 1 p.m. at Red Arrow Park. Look for an event in your town, July 4th. There are going to be events, rallies, marches, actions all over the country. Along with, also on July 4th, a Buy Nothing Day. People's Union USA is suggesting that July 4th be a general boycott day. Buy nothing. And all of July, starting now through the end of the month, we are boycotting Amazon, Starbucks, and Home Depot. Please make those boycotts permanent. But at the very least, the suggestion from the People's Union USA is to boycott Amazon, Starbucks, and Home Depot through the end of July. Boycotts, rallies, strikes, they're not meaningless. Here, if you want a little inspiration, just last week, 100,000 people marched in the Budapest Pride event. Now, they've been having a huge celebration in Budapest for many, many years during Pride. This was the largest ever, and it was in defiance of a ban. Yeah, Hungary banned Pride events. Illegal. A government ban. Police orders. Organizers called it the largest LGBTQ plus parade event in Hungary's history, in an open rebuke of Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government. That reading from NPR's website. There you go. That's a beautiful, inspirational example. Good for the people of Budapest. Good for the people of Hungary. Another boycott, July 8th through the 11th. I already mentioned Amazon, People's Union USA. Well, the good people over at 5051 already had July 8th through the 11th on their calendar because that's Amazon Prime Day, or days. And so they're suggesting the boycott on those same days, calling it the Boycott Crime Day. So lots of good reasons. Again, I'm on a permanent Amazon boycott. I will never use them. But for the month of July, and especially for 8th through the 11th, yeah, lots of nice reminders. The next big day you're marking on your calendar is July 17th. That's the Good Trouble Lives On Day of Action. Rallies, marches, events all over the country. Everybody's in on this one. goodtroubleliveson.org, 5051, ACLU, People Power United, everybody. League of Women Voters, check with your people. Make your plans. July 17th, that's going to be the next big day. Let's make it the biggest ever. Hands Off had their big event earlier this spring, but they continue, of course, handsoff2025.com. No Kings had their big event. They continue, nokings.org. Indivisible, of course. Lots of good resources there for personal action. Indivisible.org. Common Dreams. Center for American Progress has some good resources. All right, let's get just a start, at least, on what I've been promising for a long time. A conversation about the Techno-Fascists. I think maybe the reason I've been resisting this is because I just feel so inadequate. It's a very big story. It's the kind of thing you need, the full wall-sized bulletin board with all these pictures and notes and several feet of multicolored yarn stringing all these ideas and people together. It's a little overwhelming, to be honest. But there's some really basic things we need to be aware of if you're not already. Of course, you've heard of Palantir, large tech company founded in 2003 with CIA funding, by the way, headed by Peter Thiel, one of the sort of Mount Rushmore godfathers of the Techno-Fascists. Mass surveillance, ties to the U.S. military, to ICE, and, by the way, to Israeli Defense Forces. They've been instrumental in identifying targets for the IDF. As I say, founded in 2003, so right on the heels, getting in right with the fever of the war on terror. And it's grown since to become basically the digital arm of the capitalist class's rule. And I'm reading now directly from, and I'm borrowing most of this information from, an article by Javier Lopez, June 26th of this year. And as he puts it, this is surveillance of the many by the powerful few. So the reach of Peter Thiel's Palantir now extends throughout the government, across borders, has massive contracts with the Pentagon, with ICE, tracking immigrants, tracking dissidents. They very likely have a file on you and me. We still don't know the extent of Elon Musk and his dodgy boys when they got their dirty little fingers into data systems of virtually every corner of the U.S. government. Just very recently here, in June, Palantir's chief technology officer, Shyam Sankar, was sworn in as a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. The CTO of Meta, Mark Zuckerberg's Meta, also. And two executives from OpenAI, Sam Altman's OpenAI, their chief product officer and their former chief research officer. Also sworn in as lieutenant colonels. That's one rank away from general. Literally infiltrating the United States military to work on, quote, targeted projects to help guide rapid and scalable tech solutions to complex problems. What the hell does that mean? It just means they're inside. Access to top secret information. And this is right on the heels of what the regime is already doing with the military, purging officers that aren't loyal, politicizing the military, their little parade, the commencement speech, the anniversary speech, bringing MAGA right onto military bases. They were literally selling merch. And if you heard the speeches by the Orange Menace, frightening, divisive language with hand-picked audiences of military personnel cheering the dogma. So now Palantir has this massive centralized database, which includes, of course, whatever dodgy boys were able to infiltrate, tax records, medical data, bank accounts, social security information, immigration status, building what Politics Girl, the commentator, calls the infrastructure for techno-feudalism, authoritarianism in the form of data and surveillance. So how is this happening in plain sight? Where's Congress? Where's the press? Where are veterans and active duty military who need to stand up and oppose this? back to the Javier Lopez article. This institutionalized relationship between surveillance companies and the military represents the culmination of what critics call the military AI complex, where the same systems developed for consumer data harvesting are now directly integrated into weapons platforms and targeting systems. This has already been the case in the nearly 2-year assault on the Palestinians. This is complicity in genocide. And just a little note here, this isn't conspiracy theory or conjecture. These are facts on the ground. IDF spokesman, Netanyahu's war cabinet, they'll gladly tell you all about it. They're proud of it. And now they're building platforms for immigration and customs enforcement. Here, the ICE raids. The very big, very bad bill will give Homeland Security another $45 billion to fund the kidnappings, the abductions, and the renditions. And Peter Thiel's Palantir will get a nice chunk of that. We've already seen the militarized response in Los Angeles. God knows what kind of technology, face recognition, etc. that happened there. That is certainly happening at every gathering now. Did you go to a big No Kings rally? You got to know there were people in that crowd gathering data. Billions, trillions of data points, all gathered now into this massive surveillance monolith. So Peter Thiel's Palantir embedded now into American fascism. The so-called broligarchs, people like Bezos and Zuckerberg and Sam Altman, all deeply committed to AI to build on their previous successes of gathering our data, monetizing every click of our digital lives for the profit of Facebook and Instagram and Amazon. We know very well what they've done in the past. It takes very little imagination to see how they'll continue this work. They've been about surveillance and data collection now for decades. But now it's supercharged with advancing AI, and it's supercharged once again because they're in league with a fascist regime with whom they share interests now. Yeah, the shared interest between the Techno-Fascists and the right-wing repugnant authoritarian regime is seamless. They go hand in glove. So we need to follow these stories. We have to demand from our sources, our platforms, more information. And in a weird sort of a way, these invasive personalized algorithms might actually help a little bit. The more time you spend in the digital world learning about these people, these systems, you'll teach the algorithm that that's what you want to see, and it'll give you more. So, silver lining. In fact, I'll give you a little bit of good news here to close out today's program. Here's the good news. Bezos, Zuckerberg, Musk, Thiel, they're all idiots. We give them way too much credit. Musk has proven beyond any doubt that he's a complete and utter moron when it comes to politics, when it comes to the nuance of policy or even of political strategy, basic communication, and the policies themselves, putting government into action. He's a dolt. Yeah, we give these select few men way too much credit. They're not geniuses. They're nerds with power. They're mind-bogglingly, obscenely rich and have been broken. Their very humanity has been broken by their own wealth. Their perspective is so twisted. Their worldviews are so entirely tainted and skewed by their enormous wealth. They're barely able to function as normal human beings. You know, like you, like your friends, like your family, like the people you run into at the store, like the people you work with, like your mechanic down at the garage, your grocer, your doctor, just people in the world, people you deal with. These guys have crossed into another realm of unreality. I just watched, I think I mentioned, I watched the podcast, Ross Douthat, the Interesting Times podcast. You know, he's the opinion writer for the New York Times. He spoke with Peter Thiel, got some headlines. I got to tell you, it was a strange experience. Peter Thiel is he's just gone insane. I don't know what he was as a boy or before he got his billions of dollars. But the man is just nuts. Remember when we were kids and Howard Hughes was the sort of iconic billionaire madman? I swear to God, that's what we've got now. All this nonsense about transhumanism. He literally thinks Greta Thunberg is the Antichrist. Oh yeah, they got into everything. I first remember reading Ross Douthat. I remember him as a religion writer. I think that's how he started out. He started out as a religion writer. So that's still a big part of who he is. So a lot of the conversation, this hour plus, hour and a half, I forget what it was, a lot of it was about religion. They just really went off the rails. And they're so embedded, especially Thiel, so entirely embedded in right-wing, capital C, conservative, capitalistic, profit is king sort of thinking. Yeah, he's just always breathing the air of those ideas of profit, so that with every breath he takes, he just spews nonsense. So that's the good news, I think. These are just madmen. Yes, they're dangerous. Yes, we have to know what they're up to. Yes, we have to fight them. But what I'm saying is, I don't think we have to fear them. They're not geniuses. Elon Musk is not a genius. Peter Thiel is not a genius. Well, we're out of time today. We'll talk more about this. It's a very big story that's not getting nearly enough attention in mainstream media. The role of the Techno-Fascists. Yes, be concerned. Yes, fight them. But, man, this is a fight we can win. I'll just leave it at that for today. All right, thanks for listening. Of course, you can find this and all episodes on your favorite podcast platform. Go to the website, charlesburcell.com, for everything, even the other shows we've done over the years. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. Follow me on Blue Sky and Substack. Peter Donalds wrote and performed the theme song. All right, I love you. See you out there.